So the guy at the beginning of the film, who's the libertarian who tells us, do not jump off the CN Tower, you will die. His message was, yes, I'm a libertarian. I believe you have the right to do this. But if you do this, it will impede the rights of others to go up on the edge walk and do this themselves.
It was good to see you guys. Welcome back to Toronto after your North American tour.
That's right. We're finally home. And boy, I kissed the ground. I kissed the ground.
So when a series, enters the next stage of evolution, becomes a movie, typically the impulse is to go international, but you have gone as hyper-local as possible across time and space. What motivated that decision to really root this to Toronto and not go around the world?
At first, my very first instinct in Berlin, when we realized we were going to make this movie after making Blackberry, was to make it all in Europe. Mm-hmm. I was in Glasgow and I heard some people talking, like some young guys. I was like, oh man, it'd be hilarious to have Matt and Jay interacting with people who think that they're speaking English, but aren't. And that quickly fell apart. And the more we realized that this whole movie should basically be a tourism commercial for Ontario, the more everything made sense.
And so as you approached the story, was it literally putting Toronto landmarks on the whiteboard of like, we have to hit
the biggest ones we possibly could, the ones where Torontonians, as you know, wouldn't even go. Like the whole area around the CN Tower and the Sky Dome is considered a cultural wasteland. Mm-hmm. Like people from Toronto don't even go to these places. They wouldn't be caught dead.
I mean, I never went up the CN Tower until I started working for a cultural institution that was like, let's go to the CN Tower.
Exactly. And so, fun. It's amazing. And yet, for some reason, like, how many times have you been to like Ripley's Aquarium? Like, it's crazy. And so we thought, we should feature these things because in some ways it will be a good ad for Toronto. Like, hopefully people will come in and see the city. But also, I think it speaks to the weird cultural vacuousness of these characters, that they are Torontonians who love the CN Tower and who think that the CN Tower has numinous power.
Or they just sort of fall ass backwards into kind of Forrest Gumping their way through the most culturally significant parts of Toronto.
But they're culturally insignificant. Right? Like that's kind of the trick of it.
Well,
there's like a paradox almost. Yeah. They're both significant and insignificant.
Well, to see
a lot of it's just for us too, like what we've grown up with here. Like we've been in the city for ages, and so anytime that there's something that speaks personally to our experience, we feel a lot more comfortable working with it.
And I think the secret is, what does a prepubescent boy think Toronto is? And whenever we can frame a question around, well, how would a prepubescent kid answer it? Normally that's the right answer for Nirvana the band.
Because in Nirvana the band, we play prepubescent boys.
Well, and so much of your character's worldview, I feel, is informed by the pop culture that you both absorbed when you were young. But could we speak maybe to specifically the Canadian pop culture that had an impact on you in your youth that maybe informs Nirvana, the band, the show?
CFMT is a huge one for us. Basically everything that was playing from once school was done on the Raccoons, everything that Nirvana Studios put out.
May they rest in peace.
Which is crazy, yeah.
Much music?
Yeah, certainly, and the way that Queen Street transformed into a kind of cultural space outside of much music, that was a big thing. I think even though Matt and Jay don't comment on it, the fact that they live on Queen Street right next to this place where Speaker's Corner was a kind of epicenter for a while, it's like they believe that world still exists, and that is how they will catapult themselves into musical fame. So it's funny because a lot of these touchstones we don't even comment on literally, but it's
part of the DNA.
It's what shapes the worldview of these guys, because in Ontario, television, as you know, was just so huge. Television was so huge in the 90s, and because we have the CRTC that forced Canadian content to be on, we had no choice. YTV is a major touchstone for Nirvana the band, even though, in the show, we show us watching YTV a lot, but people, even personalities like PJ Phil, Rick the Temp, George Stambolopoulos, like these guys are even though they aren't spoken about, David Suzuki, like these are role models to these guys. And what's strange is that you say any of those names outside of Toronto, Gian Gomeshi, no one knows who the hell you're talking about. Like these are people who have zero cultural impact outside of like our country. And for some reason, that is exactly the way Nirvana the band kind of feels, where they're trying to get their big break at a club in Toronto, not because that is going to expose them to the United States, but because they think in their mind will join this echelon of Toronto, Sukyin Lee, like VJ style cultural influencers. And they don't even have a concept of power beyond that.
I want to also just talk about the 2000 returning to 2008 and the idea of going back in time. But I feel like a lot of people have observed that culturally there's been kind of a flattening of culture in the 2000s.
Yeah, history is dead.
Yeah, so like in the way that like the 70s and 80s and 90s were so distinct, and now you're going back 17 years. What were the challenges in making those a distinct space and distinct reality?
Well, you got to remember that we landed on it not by choice.
Yeah.
That's just when we happened to have shot the web series. So it's not like we made a conscious decision. Okay, yeah, 2008, 2007, like this is a touchstone moment.
But through that process, did it strike you as, oh, maybe actually this is a really interesting
Absolutely.
narrative? Yeah.
We felt like we'd struck gold. We couldn't believe it. We were like, it's even just watching the footage of like the skunk-haired scene girls walking down Queen Street. We were like, this is all gone. Like there's something so unself-conscious about the way people would even dress or behave that seems like has been eradicated by the modern moment.
Well, there's also us being confronted with that things haven't changed that much since then, because we really were locked into that time to do a time travel movie, and we had to challenge ourselves with saying, okay, if we do depict 2008 for 2008, what are all the most like potent ways?
It's really just changing the billboards.
Yes, right. That was exactly.
Okay, but that's one. And then like, what else? Okay, we got some footage of some, seeing the fashion, but that's how we kind of started to arrive at the more like cultural like changes on a lifestyle level. It led to the hangover joke, and that's when we realized, okay, well, that's going to be how we depict 2008 fully.
But it also spoke to the theme of the film generally, which is that yes, it's been 20 years, but as far as these characters are concerned, nothing has changed, right? Like they still are alive in the same way that they were back then. The way they live their life is the same. Like they haven't evolved at all. And so it became really interesting to go back and have the characters see themselves the way they were in 2008. And for one of them to see the lack of change as a victory and the other to see it as a total defeat. And for the movie to reckon with that in the same way that like I've been asked a lot, like, okay, so if you could go back in time and change something, what would you change? And I'm always saying, well, nothing. I'm so happy. But that is a really challenging question. Like, do you really want to be different than you were when you were a kid? And what do you want to be different? It's almost a superficial question because everybody wants to grow and grow up, but do you want to grow up at the expense of yourself and dispensing with the way that you were?
If you go back to change something when you're a kid, you're essentially prestiging your old self. Like it's not so much the kid that you're changing. You're saying the person I am now, I'm going to sacrifice completely, because if I do go back and take this fork in the road change, this person I am now ceases to exist.
Have you considered that because your characters time travel, you guys did prestige a version of yourself?
Look, I know it is factually true that I have always wrestled with the web series, for those who watched all of it, with the interaction between the web series and the television series, because it's almost like the characters relive many of the same moments in the Vice show that they did in the web series. And I'd always been so like, oh man, I wish there was a way that we could somehow redact or retroactively change that story, and so it's no secret, it's no mistake
that became an agenda of the movie,
that we go exactly
Canon could be a little more secure.
We time travel exactly to episode 2 of the web series, and so yes, it's like that is now an offshoot reality, everything that happens in the web series.
We still got some runway, some more TV to make, maybe another sequel of a movie.
I can't
I'd
wait.
like
I'm ecstatic about that. Do you think, though, that now that the movie is getting a considerable, acclaim, your visibility? I mean, I was at the Cineplex today, and there was interview. Your interview is in front of every movie. Do you think it'll be harder to shoot the movie in Toronto?
No, I think Toronto is such a multifaceted city. As you know, like the people who come to the Lightbox and watch movies here is totally different than the people who are like coming in from out of town to go to the CN Tower, which is totally different from the people who are like working in the East End. Like there's so many different cultural pockets that Jay and I have never, ever been stopped by people being like, oh, those are the guys from Nirvana band. I don't think
Or at
there
least
is
in a way that would impede our shooting.
Of course not.
But we also haven't like gone to certain places like I don't know, like going down Ossington.
We're not
at
shooting
night,
in
maybe.
the Silver Snail.
No,
Like, yeah,
like, we're choosing places strategically, I guess.
yeah, and I don't think that there is a level of fame that I know that people said that with Ali G it became difficult for him to film that movie, and that's why the later movies are all shot indoors. But I reject even that. The world is so big. People are not, especially now that we don't have a united narrative, like we aren't all watching TV like we were in the 90s. It wouldn't.
Yeah.
There is no level of success this movie could have that would impede us from making the show. There's
We're hoping
none.
our movie could change that for the movie landscape in general.
Jay, let's talk about the score, because you have the challenge of sort of recreating and homaging cues from one of the most memorable soundtracks of all time. What was it like, putting that score together?
A complete indulgent pleasure. Yeah, looking under the hood and just kind of finding some of the tricks of Silvestri and Bernard Herrmann and John Williams, just trying to put as much little things that I could in my toolkit.
There seem to be a ton of Easter eggs throughout.
Yeah.
They're not just Silvestri. And like there's a moment when you wake up from your dream. Is that like an homage to the moment in Aliens when it sounds like a James Horner kind of trill of like dream.
Oh, that, yeah. Those are just little stings, and yeah, if it can elicit a little bit of that nostalgic space, yeah, totally from Aliens.
Well, you should get into the idea of how much you work with Kurt and Bobby, the editors, to create those exact kind of moments. Because often what's happening is that the editors are taking pieces of Jay's score and reusing them in different weird ways, like that exact moment you're talking about. I remember when we first saw that, Jay and I, and it was a surprise to us.
Yeah, this is when Jay wakes up from
exactly, and it's like they're taking a different piece of score and putting it there, and then that's inspiring Jay to then create new score based on it.
Yeah.
So it's not the traditional movie is done, Jay writes the music. It's very back and forth in a way that is so gratifying.
Yeah. But what was really fun is that I thought that I was going to have to really stick to the Back to the Future sound and make sure I'm doing a one-to-one thing, because we're so into the idea of getting as close as we can to the real feeling. But having scored a couple movies before, I started to just do the actual process of like finding the motifs and finding where you really paint by numbers once you know what the whole gradient game is of how to build a score properly. And then once you find those things, I'm really only kind of using the Back to the Future toolkit of like certain tricks, like the octatonic scale stuff. And from then on, I was not really looking at the parody stuff, and I was just kind of doing an original score. And we started to get excited about. I was just getting excited showing Matt, like, oh, look at this. This is like our own, like this isn't really Back to the Future. It's our own proprietary motif here that we could just keep leaning onto. So,
could you speak more about your relationship with the editors and how they surprised you through the process in terms of bringing you ideas?
I believe that this is an editor's medium. All of my films are made by the editors by design. Like with any movie, I'm trying to basically shoot things from the perspective of a documentary filmmaker with no real goals. Of course, I have my own goals where it's like, oh, I would love it if we could do this or if the story could go like this. But I have no ego connection with an outcome, because I know that Kurt and Bobby are going to respond to what they like. And it is such an organic back and forth where they will be like, I know you wanted this scene to be about this, but look at this.
Yeah.
Look at this scene where I'm in the middle of Yonge and Dundas Square and that guy comes up to me and says, Mr. Hollywood, Mr. Rocky, Mr. Arnold, Mr. Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah.
To me, I thought that was just a mistake. Not even a mistake. First of all, I didn't even know I was on camera when that was being shot. And I thought that this was just meaningless. In fact, I didn't even realize that it happened to me until Bobby came downstairs in the editing studio and was like, I think this might be too crazy, but look at this scene. And then we played it and Kurt and I were like screaming. We couldn't believe how funny it was.
How did you get him to say Jay?
That is a Bobby trick.
Yeah.
So he's chatting with me and you're only seeing some of the things that he says. And I say, oh, I see. You're saying that all of these people are famous just like Jay. And then he said to me, that's also Jay.
You gotta know how to kind of harvest those lines, and you might have to keep saying that to him before he says it.
And so Bobby takes this piece and makes it so that it's all of one thing. And then once we have the base of that, that's when it really goes crazy, because that's when we start re-editing and using this is gonna sound insane for such a seemingly documentary moment, but there's so much VFX in that simple thing. And it's VFX of people's arms moving certain ways, moving me from one part of the frame to another to make it seem like it's all one shot so that we can create a story moment out of it. And so all of that is happening because of the editing. It's the kind of thing that you couldn't think up and write if you had a million years.
No, they get to present us with a new reality that we didn't expect on any scene. And this has always been the process, but now that Matt and I both get to be the audience for it the first time, because we'll improvise something and we know that this is going to be the process. So we're basically just contributing ideas and different ways of doing it and trying to do it so many different ways until we're exhausted. And then this take gets mixed with this reaction, this question gets answered from a different take that's an answer to a different question. Sometimes a brand new reality is made trying to get us to the same from point A to point B, but that's why sometimes it can feel so bizarre, and that's just a editing performance from our guys.
It's an editor's medium, in my opinion. This type of filmmaking is totally an editor's medium.
I mean, I agree, and it's so clear from the process and the result. I want to talk about TIFF Midnight Madness.
Oh yeah,
and the Canadian premiere. The fact that we had Ayush, the Canadian Tire manager, in the audience. What was that experience like? You hadn't seen him since we shot it.
Yeah. So the guy at the beginning of the film, who's the libertarian who tells us, "Do not jump off the CN Tower, you will die," and more important to him was that his message was, yes, I'm a libertarian. I believe you have the right to do this. But if you do this, it will impede the rights of others to go up on the edge walk and do this themselves. So he had a very coherent reason for us not doing this. It was easily the best screening I've ever been in Toronto. Obviously, it was our own movie, but I remember when I went to go see Green Room at Midnight Madness and the feeling that had, and that has still stayed with me. Kurt was there as well. I think Bobby might have been too. And we'd always said, oh my God, I wish we could do something like this. Something that evokes this same feeling of mania in an audience where there's a combination of you're in the grip of the film. You're totally in its grip. And Midnight Madness, ever since its inception, there's been 2 or 3 films a year that they almost collectively seize on the insanity of the crowd, and we're all working as one organism watching this thing happen. And that was, I've been searching for that feeling my whole life, and to have it happen.
I mean, that's what I'm always looking for when I'm putting together the section myself. I do see the audience as an instrument that is going to harmonize with the movie.
Yes, and it's out of your control.
Yeah.
And that feeling that night, the mayor was there. It was like we were all.
You received diplomatic immunity from her.
Let's hope. She's gonna be the one who saves us from the CN Tower. I begged her that night, but it was the crowning moment of my life. I remember when I was there, I'd snuck in to see. It might have been Jennifer's Body. I don't remember, but I remember the person on stage introducing the film saying that it was a lifelong dream of theirs to play Midnight Madness. And something clicked with me when I was young. I was like, oh yeah, Like, this is a place where you go as a filmmaker to do something that you can't do other places.
Oh, it was so much fun. We used to line up to go to them when we were really young.
Oh, constantly. To me, it was the most important time of the year, hanging out with that group of people waiting to get into Midnight Mass.
I was probably in the same lines you were, and I always considered it like the state of the union of where transgressive and shocking and wild cinema was going. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
it was an honor to have you guys at Midnight Madness, and we hope to have you back again.
I can't wait. Yeah, and vice versa. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Off to the social.